Wheeling Plant Commission meeting for Thursday, January 16th is called to order. Please stand for the pledge.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Mr. Secretary, if you could please take the roll.
Commissioner Dorband.
I'm here.
Commissioner Johnson, I am here. Commissioner Powers.
I'm here.
Commissioner Schaaf.
I'm here.
Commissioner Stylen.
Here.
Commissioner Zangara.
Here.
And Chairman Rafato.
Here.
Full house.
Mr. Jennings, any changes to the agenda?
We have no changes this evening.
Okay, great. Citizens' concerns and comments, opportunity for citizens to air any issues that they may have. Nope. Okay, thank you. Consent items, none. Items for review. Docket number SCBA 1330, NJET 743, Sumac Road, appearance approval of wall sign. Mr. Jennings.
Thank you. The petitioner NJET was here not too long ago with a proposed wall sign. Following the direction of the commission, they have revised the sign, and I believe we have a representative here tonight who can answer questions on it. Let's see. We'd originally had the relocation of the sign from the Prospect Heights side of the airport. Since that point, the petitioner has revised the sign to a channel letter style sign, which you see here.
Great, thank you. If you can give your name and business address again for our recording secretary.
Certainly. My name is Bob Pyatt, P-I-E-T, and I represent NJET at 743 Sumac in Wheeling.
The floor is yours if you have anything more to...
Certainly. Basically, following your advice and talking it over with my superiors, we decided to forego moving the existing signs located at Hangar 8, which is in the village of Prospect Heights. We then worked with Signorama to develop this channel letter sign. And we are foregoing adding additional signage to the back, or to the operation side facing section of the airfield.
Great. Thank you. Any other thing? No?
Nope, no more further comments.
All right, we'll start with Commissioner Stylen.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I think this is a really sharp-looking sign. Can I ask you why you chose not to go with any internal illumination?
At the present time, we're foregoing not internally illuminating it until we get some more room in the budget. And then we'll revisit this again when we get down that path when we're ready to illuminate it.
Okay. I mean, it's a really nice, is that your corporate logo?
Yeah, that is our corporate logo.
You have that on your business cards?
Yes.
That really looks sharp. Thank you very much. I think, it's much needed improvement over the last sign, so thank you.
Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Commissioner Schaaf.
I agree with Commissioner Stylen. I think it looks pretty neat, but other than that, I have no further questions. Thank you.
Commissioner Dorband.
Nice sign, just think I would have liked to see it lighted, that's all.
No, we have once money comes within the budget, we have full plans to have it illuminated.
Okay, thank you.
Certainly.
Andrew, if they plan on illuminating it in the future, could we pass it as illuminated so they don't have to come back?
I'm just writing that condition that way, and I'll read off in a moment.
Commissioner Powers.
Thank you. I also like the sign, and I just have a quick question for staff. Is it because it doesn't need to be illuminated because of the characteristic of this sign compared to what we had last time? Is that the answer for that one?
Well, the sign that you had in front of you last time could not have been internally illuminated in accordance with the code. This sign can be internally illuminated, it's just not in the budget at this time. So I think it's appropriate to have a condition of approval that allows them to illuminate it subject to an electrical permit.
Okay, I have nothing further. Thank you.
Commissioner Zangara?
I have nothing, thank you.
Commissioner Johnson?
Just to clarify, so it's being built to be internally
Yes, it is.
illuminated. You're just leaving the electronics out right
Yeah.
now? Okay, that's all I had. Thanks.
And all our documentation has the electronics in it, so
And so what is the condition?
That the sign may be illuminated with an electrical permit, but without additional review by the Plan Commission.
Can we add the word internally?
Yes, may be internally illuminated.
Right, because I've seen some signs with just spots on them like
Yeah.
And this is really a nice sign. So that's all I have. Do I hear a motion?
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion by Commissioner Johnson, seconded by Commissioner Powers. Mr. Secretary?
Commissioner Johnson, I vote yes. Commissioner Powers?
Yes.
Commissioner Dorband?
Yes?
Commissioner Schaaf?
Yes.
Commissioner Steilen?
yes.
Commissioner Zangara?
Yes.
And Chairman Raffato?
Yes. Thank you.
All right, thank you.
You just have something to sign.
All right.
Interesting to see. Turns out, I mean, it's
Do I have to reopen this, or is it just continue?
Continue.
really, yeah.
Did we get two printing? Oh.
This guy, I forgot my glasses. I have lost it. I've lost them.
And while we're waiting for that, the sign with the mesh applied to it is similar to what's up at the West, and I don't know if you've noticed that that sign is black during the day and white at night. It's a similar construction as this would be.
Calling docket number 2014-1, Village of Wheeling, amendments to Title 19 zoning. Mr. Jennings.
Thank you. We opened the public hearing on the medical use of cannabis at last week's meeting. There were several questions and requests for staff. So what I'd like to do is just go through the changes that were made, as well as the responses from the village attorney on this. The first item were the definitions. The Plan Commission requested that staff modify the definitions to make a specific reference to the state act, the Compassionate Use of Medical Cannabis Pilot Program Act. Each of those definitions has been modified in that way. Are there any questions on the first? Yes.
The D is still missing in "and." The other rewording got done, but
That is the dispensary or the
Yeah.
Related
the
supplies
dispensary.
and educational.
under dispensary?
yes.
Sorry, I didn't hear what you said.
D missing. J supplies and.
The D was missing in the paragraph on medical cannabis.
Dispensary,
Dispensary.
the last sentence, the last 5 words of the sentence is missing an "and."
Okay, I will fix that this time.
This time for sure.
Okay. Are there any other questions on the definitions?
Nope.
Okay, the most substantial changes that were requested came under use regulations. If you have the packet, I can go to the packet on our view as well. The commission had requested that we make additional modifications to primarily the dispensary regulations. The first item to note here is this reference to the pending regulations by the state. This just notes that any regulations that the state agency adopts in following our regulations would apply. As the village attorney noted last week, there could be some potential further modification should the state regulating authorities come up with regulations that would be in conflict. We may need to further modify the village.
Andrew, I'm sorry, I really can't hear you down here.
The village attorney last week had suggested that we may need to further modify our regulations with respect to medical cannabis if the state regulating agencies, which would be the Department of Financial and Professional Regulation as well as the Department of Agriculture, if the two of them have regulations in the next couple of months, it's possible that the village may need to amend the code again, but she did advise that it would be best to go ahead and pass this set of regulations and amend only if needed. Scrolling down, we have the next change was the request to include summer camp within the list of restricted uses. The plan submittal, this section D here, has been modified to provide some additional detail on the business operation, deliveries, number of employees, hours of operation, as well as a detailed security plan described in this section and signage plans as described in this section. So these two sections below, the security and video surveillance section and the signage, advertising, and packaging section have been added. The video surveillance section just describes the minimum requirements for the operation to have video surveillance in the parking area as well as the other areas inside the facility. Deliveries, one of the suggestions of the Lake County Task Force was that deliveries occur indoors. That's been repeated here. We have a proposed requirement to maintain video recordings for the length as directed by the Wheeling Police Department, but no less than 30 days.
So does that mean that we, the village, the police department can change that?
To increase?
Yes.
That, yes, it does, as written. Yes.
Okay, thank you.
I just have a question. I know that it says that they have to outline the hours, but in that, will there also be an hours when things will be delivered to?
The Lake County.
Or is that all encompassed in the hours itself?
So the Lake County Task Force has suggested that deliveries occur only during normal business hours. If the deliveries occur inside a secured area of the facility, I'm not sure that that's necessary. So if the Plan Commission wanted to recommend something to the board, you could certainly do that. I think on the special use, having a description of the hours of operation as well as the delivery hours, I think would be adequate.
Has there been some kind of a study on what kind of hours that would be? I mean, is there some kind of a window there that other people have established?
No, the Lake County Task Force is the only guideline that we've looked at. They had suggested that they occurred during normal business hours, I think, so that
What do they consider normal business hours?
I would guess 9 to 5. Not the middle of the night. I think the idea was to have the delivery to control the outside medical cannabis as much as possible, not have it be sitting in the parking lot for a half hour in the middle of the night.
So they would be required to have basically a drive-in delivery option. I mean,
An overhead door of some sort to get into the building.
it wouldn't just be a dock. They'd have to actually get in the building.
I suppose if you had a dock that's a sealed dock, that might be something you could look at during special use review if they had a means of controlling that access. could be up to your
Because
interpretation.
that would take out a lot of options as
Well,
far as where they could
well,
move into.
I would say most industrial buildings have some sort of overhead door. It's not all that uncommon, and it may just be a matter of locating a door in a more convenient location for that business. It's not something I think is terribly unusual.
And maybe this is not the time to ask, but I'm going to ask at this point. You tell me it can happen later. The map that we received basically told us where we cannot have these located. Do we have such a map that says where they can be located? I think that by looking at the map that I looked at, it was very difficult to tell where it would be an appropriate place and where it wouldn't. I mean, it would be more hard to tell from the map where it would be appropriate.
It would be I don't think I have that map right in, actually, I have it on this computer, but not the other one. The shaded areas on that map are, do you want to pass that down? So the shaded areas are the restricted areas. What is not shaded would be the areas that the state regulations would allow. Within the non-shaded areas on that map, the majority of the area is I-1, I-2, or I-3. So that non-shaded area is a pretty good representation of where this would be allowed as a special use. If you look at the intersection of the Hints and the train tracks, that area there is the majority of the I-1, I-2, and I-3 property that would be eligible is in that location.
Okay, thank you.
Sure. In addition to the security, there was a request by the commission to add some regulations regarding signage. These suggested regulations are borrowed heavily from the Lake County Task Force recommendation. It was their model ordinance that they had put out for the use of the municipalities, and this is fairly similar to what they had adopted. Are there any questions on this?
So the village attorney was okay with this because she seemed to question our not allowing graphics.
The Lake County regulations went a little bit farther than this.
Right.
The Lake County regulation specifically limited all graphics. The Lake County regulations actually, if you read them, do not allow the business to identify itself as a cannabis dispensary. So no other Wheeling business would be regulated in that way. So she would not have advised that we include that. But she did read this and was
Okay.
more okay with it. Are there any other questions on that section? In addition to the identification signage, there's also signage indicating that the premises is under video surveillance, as well as restricting entry onto the premises. The next section is on the cultivation centers. The commission requested that we essentially refer to the state act rather than repeat it. So that is what's been done here, is a reference has been made to the state act. The only other change that we made to this was similar to the dispensary regulations. We've added a note here that should the Department of Agriculture adopt regulations after the Village of Wheeling regulations, those regulations shall apply. Any other questions on that part? Then the final request that the commission made was to remove cultivation centers from the I-1 district and leave the dispensaries as originally proposed, I-1, I-2, and I-3, and limit the cultivation center to the I-2 and I-3 districts. And that's what you see here. And with that, what I would like to do then is go on to the The village attorney had a couple of other questions that the commission had asked, so I'd like to just go through those, if there are no other questions on that.
Nope.
If you look at the last page of the staff report, the village attorney answered 3 questions submitted during the Plan Commission meeting last week. The first was regarding satellite cultivation centers. The village attorney called the Department of Agriculture, and the agriculture representative indicated that question, the question of how to handle a facility that has 2 buildings, a production building and a warehouse building, how that might be treated under the state licensing regulations. So the Department of Agriculture has indicated that they are likely to address a license which has a 2-building complex. So they have, I believe, 120 days from January 1st to come up with regulations. The village attorney's advice on this was that as they are likely to address it, it is prudent to just wait and see how the state regulates it. If they allow for it in a certain fashion, the Village of Wheeling wouldn't be able to restrict it beyond that regulation anyway. So the attorney's advice was to let the state see how they're going to sort out this particular issue. But as she said, they are anticipating that a 2-building or sort of a manufacturing and a warehouse combined could be under a license, and they're going to have some sort of regulation to address that. Any questions on that one?
Well, the basis of the question when I brought it up was having 2 centers that were growing, or 2 centers that were, and that was the basis of that. I didn't want a center growing and another satellite center growing. I can see where the state would say, you can grow at one place and warehouse at another, and that's fine, but I just didn't want to see 2. And I would think that they would prohibit that. I would hope that they would prohibit that.
Yeah, it appears just based on the review of the text that a license will be issued for one entity in one state police district, and that's it for that state police district.
Yeah.
The act was pretty clear on that. So the likelihood of somebody trying to
Establish more centers.
Exactly.
Growing would be limited.
Extremely limited. It's 1 per state police district. Are there any other questions on that one? Paraphernalia prescription. The commission had asked if there was a need or if it would be advisable to include any language relating to the paraphernalia, because the dispensary would be able to sell both medical cannabis and paraphernalia. The village attorney reviewed that and found that the state act is substantially restrictive, and any regulation that goes beyond that would be outside of zoning authority. It would be more of a licensing, and the state is going to handle the registration and licensing of the patients. So she felt there was no need to include any additional language. Any questions? And the last one, similarly related to licensing, the state act distinguishes the village's role in medical cannabis from the role in liquor licensing. The state authorizing legislation for liquor is very different, and the village does have substantial authority under that act to issue licenses. The Medical Cannabis Act is extremely different, and the village has no licensing authority. So what we would likely do is issue a standard business license and nothing else. Are there any additional questions?
I have an additional comment, Mr. Chairman. Andrew, when you prepared the packet for presentation to the village board, I kind of agree with Pam that it would be nice to have a map showing where the cultivation centers could be allowed, and then to have another map that shows where the dispensing centers could be allowed as opposed to not being allowed. I think it would be much more obvious, I think. Pam, is that what you were?
Yes.
Yeah, I just
exactly.
think that would be a lot more obvious to the village board members than the various colored circles and whatever. I just throw that out as, if it's too much work,
No, we should be able to combine, it's basically adding a zoning layer to the map that we've already created, and we can just shade in instead of shade out.
right, but have a separate map for cultivation and
Dispensary.
dispensing as well, I think.
Because there are slight differences, right?
Yes, there's substantial differences. One is I-1, I-2, I-3. The other is I-2 and I-3 only. One has a location restriction that's 1,000 feet, and the other one is 2,500 feet, so. All right, we can do that.
Do we need to do a poll on that, Mr. Chairman?
No. I saw everybody on the side of my eyes nodding their heads.
You heard us.
I heard you.
And that is all I have.
That is all. Any other questions? Do we have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion by Commissioner Dorban, second by Commissioner Johnson. Mr. Secretary,
Commissioner Dorban.
Yes.
Commissioner Johnson is yes. Commissioner Powers.
Yes.
Commissioner Schaaf.
Yes.
Commissioner Steilen.
Yes.
Commissioner Zangara.
Yes.
And Chairman Rafado.
yes. And before I close, I want to thank Andrew and Brooke for putting all this together. It was a very good job, very thorough, and it made our life a lot easier in trying to understand this. So, motion to close?
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Great, thank you. All right,
Oh, look, the map's right there.
that was right there. I saw it over there. Yep. Yep. Approval of minutes, we have none. Other business, Mr. Jennings?
Thank you. I think what I'll probably do, so I can take notes and see this better, is go to the podium for the sign code.
Surely.
Off the screen. Okay. So staff has started the process of taking a look at the sign code for some potential amendments. And as we've done in the past with both the zoning code and the sign code,
Could you lift that up a little bit?
this thing?
Yeah, it just seems to, it doesn't seem as loud today as it has in the past. Thank you.
I'll try to aim.
There,
for it
that's better. That's great.
So as I was saying, our pattern on these is to try to open up a workshop discussion, take in some feedback from the Plan Commission, let you know what sort of issues we're looking at in each code, and then come back with a set of draft regulations, and then open up the hearing once we have a better idea of what it is we're doing. In this case, we don't have any draft proposal yet, but I just want to go through the issues that we've been looking at, and we compile these over the course of 6 months or a year with the types of complaints that we get, with the types of issues that we have with petitioners, and some of the code enforcement issues that we deal with. So the first topic that I wanted to go through is in industrial district signage. We've had an increase in the number of atypical industrial tenants. We've had locations that do have more public access. These would be the recreational facilities in particular. Because they are in industrial buildings, sometimes multi-tenant industrial buildings, it is a little bit difficult for them to be found. So what we've had are a series of these businesses typically putting up temporary directional signage. So we've had discussions ourselves about what we might need to do with the code to regulate directional signage. It's conceivable that at the industrial district regulation of, I think we're 6 square feet, you could have multiple directional signs without a permit or permit review lawfully placed at a industrial building if there are multiple tenants. So we don't have a particular set of regulations proposed yet, but what we're trying to figure out is how best to deal with the typical multi-tenant commercial situation. You can restrict this highlighted here. You can restrict the 300-foot separation between 2 freestanding signs. In an industrial building with 2 tenants, there's no multi-tenant sign necessarily. If you have a smaller training facility, for example, at one end of the building and the other end of the building, it'll be probably less than 300 feet. So what we're looking at is any direction from the commission on how to both provide for these businesses to be identified as well as prevent any sort of visual clutter.
Talking about a permanent basis or like on a temporary basis, or starting temporary and then moving to some type of permanent solution?
Well, what we've had mostly thus far has been temporary signs. But we've noticed that the code doesn't necessarily prevent somebody from establishing a permanent directional sign without a permit or without Plan Commission review. So what we're trying to figure out is this a problem that needs a solution yet? Or do we wait and see? Or do we go ahead and put together a series of regulations just to be safe? So I don't know if this is something that the commission would like us to spend our time on.
Comments?
I mean, I kind of understand what you're asking. I see the ARC performance and stuff like that. And I can understand like the owner's frustration maybe because he's in a larger facility trying to pinpoint exactly where it is because he may be hidden off on the side somewhere. I guess it's kind of hard to enforce, but maybe you should put some type of a time limit on it, or else everybody will be doing it. But it's really kind of tough to determine when to pull it. I think in a way it's needed for a startup, but maybe we need to put a time limit as to how long they can leave it out there before it's pulled and then try to move to a permanent solution. But that gets costly too, I assume. So not really sure what to say.
Sure.
All these,
And please, and let's not be formal, it's just a workshop, so I'm not going to call on anybody, just
Okay.
say something when you want to say something.
all those types of educational, recreational uses require a special use anyway, correct?
Up to a threshold. We have the educational and the educational and recreational up to 12 would not require your review and approval. It's once they get a little bit larger than that they do.
Where do you think these types of signs that might be in conflict, would they be in the real small ones or the ones that we might have special use?
I think it's both. I think it's the nature of the business. They have. It's not to say that they're inappropriate in that location. It's already been determined that they are an appropriate tenant in these locations. It's that they have, in this respect, a unique operational need. They have some need for people to find them. It's not a delivery driver. It's not an employee. This is the public. It's somewhat unique. So I would say that it's not size, but it's the use. It's the use itself.
As part of the special use criteria in review, could we allow additional signage for those types of entities?
Not in conflict with the sign code. It would have to be, to do that, you would probably need something, if you're looking at this, you'd probably need a subsection, industrial, commercial. You probably need some other section to be able to do that.
I just thought that might be an easy.
Well, it's not a, for the special uses,
Because then we'd have control over locations.
well, you'd have to do both. I mean, if you're looking at the control through the special use review, you could certainly put it in there, but you do have these other permitted ones that are smaller. So I think that you'd also need something in the sign code to spell out, within industrial districts, here are the guidelines for identification signage.
Is there a size that these signs, because don't we allow those traffic flow signs within an industrial, I don't know what we call them, but
It's 6 square feet. So what we've got right now, we're just starting to see, maybe a few of them are realizing that they might be able to identify themselves under 6 square feet. And then their neighbor is going to do the same thing, and then so on.
Right. So in a 8-tenant building, you could have 8 signs.
6 all in a
But
row.
what happens if there was one freestanding sign for the building?
Yeah, it seems like
You could identify the building.
the burden should be on the landlord, between the landlord and his tenants, to put up a
If you're
multi-tenant
in a
sign.
multi-tenant building, you identify the building. If you identify the building, you should be able to find the suite, I guess.
Sure, and I'm trying to think of a couple different buildings that do this. If you look at the ACO building, which is now primarily SG 360, and has no ACO in it, I don't think anymore, but the post and panel directional sign that they have is effectively a multi-tenant directional sign. It is not a particularly expensive sign. So I think if the commission wanted to prevent visual clutter by requiring some sort of signage like that for the building, I think that you probably could. I don't think you'd get into any sort of First Amendment issue of restricting their signage if you did require that.
Are we restricted, like on a multi-tenant sign, to say, like, how much of each sign is dedicated to how much of a tenant? Like, if I have 6 tenants and I have a sign, can I say, well, the 2 bigger tenants who occupy more space get more part of the sign? Or, I don't know, I'm just throwing stuff out, I don't know.
I think the way we handle that right now is that anything that is not standard requires its own review. So if you wanted to do a double-sized panel, you could bring it back for an additional appearance review. I think that's...
I like that idea of having just a building tenant sign. I think
Yeah,
that's
Yeah, I
that
mean,
seems like
in
that's
a
where the,
reasonable way to do
that's
it.
where the burden should be.
Yeah.
Like in Steve, your case, that sign last week that had the one big sign with the 2 for possible. If you really want to identify your building, you say it's the Hot Mamas. We're in the Hot Mama building. I mean,
And that's what happens.
Yeah.
I mean, think about it. We're in the IBM building, we're in the Chase building.
The Echo building.
Echo, we're in the Echo, formerly known as Echo. I like that.
So what I think we can do then with that direction is we can do a combination of things. We can look at the exempt directional signage, clarify what that is, and then we'll go around, we'll take some pictures of the less expensive multi-tenant signs and try to figure out, is there a standard here? Are we looking for 3-inch minimum, letters, that sort of thing. So we can try to figure out what it is that would make sense for this. I think having some examples, like the SG 360 building, of a sign that is not particularly expensive but has removable panels, I think that would be good going into this, and we'll go around and try to find some good examples of that.
So that was like one of the questions I have. Can you, like within that sign, you can move the panels around? Like if you lose a tenant, you can like give it to somebody else instead of showing up as a blank space, or how does that, you're like fixed, you have a fixed position on that sign and you put whatever you need.
Some of these signs, I'm trying to think of another one. There's an office building between Bob Chin's and the Bob Chin's parking lot that's got Remax and a couple of other tenants in it. I think that has panels that can be pulled. So I think there's a way to construct it.
But I think all the panels ought to be uniform.
No, I
otherwise-
agree. I just didn't know the flexibility.
Otherwise, we get like Gaslight, which I think one tenant has 3/4 of.
Right. Yeah. Yeah, exactly.
Are there any other questions on that general topic?
No?
We did have, while I have this on the screen, we did have a request in the last few weeks, and actually last week again, relating to the landscape requirement. Right now, we don't have any specific requirement for what a landscape plan for a sign needs to have as a sort of a minimum standard. So things like scale, plant sizes, et cetera. Is there any consensus on the commission of whether or not that is that something that is a significant enough issue that we should have some minimum standard? And if so, what types of things should we come back with?
I gotta say, it's gotta be fairly legible too, because I had a hard time interpreting that last sign, what was going on.
So general legibility, are there any other minimum requirements that we'd like to see?
And I guess I assume
Dimensions.
if at like maturity time with the plants are in there, if they could like show us if everything were to go good, how much of the area would be covered at maturity time? Or is that what part of what this is in here with the percentages you have in this part of the code here?
No, the percentages don't really take that into account. I think what you're asking is, should we require them to show at planting and, how it's expected to grow, or?
Yeah, something like that, I don't know.
That might be difficult to pull off. I'm trying to think of another way to get to that same.
Do we have that requirement when we have a landscape plan for a building?
The zoning code is a little bit more specific in terms of what constitutes the plan. There's a requirement for scale and some other items on it. The sign code does not really get into detail. We could have some sort of minimum, legible, the dimensions of the sign and the area shall be shown. We can get into some of that and to just spell it out a little bit more if that I think might help.
I think maybe if it's just if you have a 1 gallon plant, maturity, it's 3 gallons wide. That's all. I mean, just so we have an idea that if something's a foot tall, it's going to grow 3 feet tall and that's it. Or we say so it has to be maintained at 3 feet tall.
Yeah, I think just some rudimentary general showing. I mean, we can see how it goes in the future and adjust accordingly.
These numbers, I was looking back at what we did from the streetscape. These numbers aren't the same as the numbers we had from the streetscape. I guess that my question is, which one do we want to use? Because now we're contradicting what we did before to what we're doing now.
Well, this streetscape recommendation is what informed this. I think, and you guys can probably remember as well as I can, I hope. I think what we did on this was we added some flexibility because we had the discussion when we wrote this about other types of plants that have winter interest that are not necessarily evergreen. So I think that's where we came up with this, was that we added some flexibility for somebody to design like a red twig dogwood into their winter interest as opposed to just limiting the evergreens. I remember some part of that discussion, but we did use the streetscape recommendation to base this. I guess in terms of just looking at it right now while we're talking, if I were just reading this for the first time, I would not know what 10% of what, 30% of what is it area. So I think maybe I would probably say, okay, it says square footage in the earlier part of that sentence, probably square footage, but we might be able to word that better.
If we were to go back and use whichever one we use, if we were to go back and use the recommendation that we had put forth before, they should just be the same. So one of them has to, should change. That's all I'm thinking, just so we're consistent.
Is there any other guidance on that? So is the consensus of the commission to go back to the streetscape recommendation and use that instead of this language?
What were the numbers on that?
Well, what I have here is for the sign, it was 10% deciduous shrubs, 10% dwarf evergreens, 40% flowers, annuals, ever-blooming, seasonal perennials with interest, and 40% may be miscellaneous. Creativity is encouraged here. And those are the numbers that pretty much came from Lori.
That would make sense.
I mean, I'm only throwing that out just so we're consistent one way or another.
I think it makes sense.
You got this from what?
This has been in there.
This is what we put in after the streetscape subcommittee recommended this. This is what we wrote during that, I would imagine during the public hearing process. I can't remember exactly.
Yeah. I like the consistency, so. The maturity percent, I'm not certain, what does that do for us? I mean, I would assume that when someone wants to landscape, they eventually want to fill in everything, and they're going to do it by counts of plants to know what will fill an area. And how easy is that to obtain maturity?
I would say it's probably not easy for some of the landscapers because on a sign, I would say 50%, just guessing, of these are designed by the landscape maintenance company. Unlike a site plan review where they typically will have a landscape architect, the signs are small enough that they have a relationship with their landscape maintenance company and just say, please do this for us. So projecting out maturity, they may have extensive knowledge, but not extensive design experience. So I don't know. What I'm thinking we can probably do is, if we're looking at, the minimum requirements for this will be legibility, including dimensions of the sign and the landscape area, square footage of the area, et cetera. The design shall take into account the growth of the plants and be designed for the mature size of the plants. That would be including proximity to each other, proximity to the sign, height of the address, that sort of thing. So I think we could have something that says, please consider the maturity.
Why don't you do that? Let's see how that goes.
I think if you look at some of the pictures that Commissioner Steinle sent us to look over that he did, you can tell how much, when they matured, how different it looks. I mean, I think that we, really need to focus on how they're going to look, not when they're planted, but as you said, at maturity, and more focus, and have people take that into consideration more clearly. Because some of those pictures are pretty telling. How, the one at Kentucky Fried Chicken certainly has improved over years, but it's taken a lot of years to get there. While others look look pretty skimpy.
Plants either die or grow. You have two options.
Wow, how profound.
Unless they're
They die or grow.
Unless they're
They're gonna
in
do one.
plaza and they stay the same for
yeah.
25
Yeah.
years.
in plastic.
Die or grow. That's good.
More plastic plants.
Encourage use of Miracle-Gro.
Let's get that quote in the title here.
They either grow or die.
Yeah. Yeah. Plants either grow or die.
So the next piece we're looking at is, just as a reminder to us, I think, there's directional signs. If we modify the directional sign requirement in some fashion, we might need to pair that with a modification to this section as well. There's no real point of discussion on this. It was just kind of a reminder to us. Exempt signs. We have, I think, updated this section a few times in the last 4 or 5 years. The directional is mentioned here. I don't think we have any major need to update this other than consistency with whatever we do with directional signs. I will move on to our next.
Anybody have any comment about directional signs? Commissioner Steinle, I heard a hum from you, so.
Not directional signs.
No, I'm sorry, the exempt
Exempt
signs. I'm sorry, exempt signs.
The neon signs that say open, lottery,
Gambling.
Video
some-
gaming.
Some, do we have a criteria for those types of neon signs? Are they counted
do.
in the?
Yes. They are here. It's in this, within this section. So where you're looking is on window signage, you have both the overall requirements, the per window requirement, and then the electrical. You can't be over on any one of those things. So you can't be over on total square footage, you can't be over on coverage on a particular pane, you can't be over on the percentage dedicated to an electrical sign. So yes, there are regulations on it, and this is where they're found. We haven't had, since we added this, I don't think we've had very many issues with it.
So it's a matter of enforcement.
It's a matter of enforcement, and the problem that we had had before, that we were trying to resolve with what you see here, was the argument about how to measure something. We had an interpretation of square footage of a window sign that, because people have paid money and they view the sign as exempt, because it is, they do not like to be told to remove window signs, and they will argue it's very difficult to argue out the measurement when somebody says, well, you're overcounting it, and they come up with their own calculation. So we've put in the code now, this is how we measure, black and white. But it's been, I'd say, better since then.
Does this also address the, because I'm seeing more of them, the box signs are like the reader signs that got the scrolling words. Is that encompassed in this too?
That is under prohibited signs.
So we're not there yet.
We're getting there.
Okay. The other thing is on C6, covering of windows. Is that more like the grocery stores putting the signs in the window, advertising sale items and stuff like that, or no?
Grocery stores have a window coverage regulation that is higher.
Higher?
But this is referring to like a film. If
Like
you
the
see-
liquor barn.
Oh, yeah, okay.
Or I'm trying to think of who else has it. I think Fresh Farms has a fruit stand film
Oh, the
with a
new,
graphic on it.
the new ice cream place does too. La
don't-
And the
Micahana.
Polish
I don't know if
deli
that's a
has-
permanent one.
Oh, yeah, Christina's, doesn't Christina's? have-
Sure, so there's, the idea of that is that if there's we talked about this with Stella's as well, the Stella's up at Lexington, which is going to black out one of their windows using a film. So that's what this refers to, is
Okay.
that that's considered an appearance review
Okay,
and not a sign.
Okay.
If it doesn't have signage on it.
thanks.
But if it has fruits and other stuff, items on it, is it?
It's gray area. Now, something like that, I would say is probably still in the design. One way or another, probably would be a review, if it came up.
Interesting. Just seems that there's a proliferation of what we interpret as prohibited signs and maybe exempt, what we think shouldn't be exempt are exempt.
Are there examples? I mean, we can take a look at them. If we're coming to make changes to the code and there are things that you would no longer like to see as exempt, we can certainly take a look.
I guess the signs that typically bother me, if you look at AutoZone, they have one real nice big sign that probably covers the maximum square foot, but it's one sign. And then there are others that have little pieces of various size papers scattered, not in any uniform arrangement, plastered up wherever you could find a
Space.
space that
Right,
seems
yeah.
to feel it. And I don't know how you regulate junky looking.
Yeah, you're right. It's more of as, you know, I said, it's the enforcement, you know.
Yeah, I don't know the answer to that one. I don't know if that's something that we can do, but I'll try to find out.
Yeah.
Anything on exempt? Anything else? So temporary signs, what we're trying to resolve now are some, what I would characterize as inconsistencies between what we allow for temporary signs and what are considered prohibited signs.
Considered what?
Prohibited.
Oh, prohibited.
So if you look at temporary.
Thought you said brain dead. Some of them might be, but
So if you look at temporary, and then if you can, I don't think I can do this, but if you put it side by side with prohibited, there's an exception here, which allows certain types of otherwise prohibited signs to be allowed in conjunction with a special event. So what we're looking at is, does this create does this give the impression that certain prohibited signs are in fact not prohibited? In our preliminary opinion of this is yes, where we have signs that is difficult once a few businesses get a permit to put up a prohibited sign. It is difficult to get a handle on it after that. The pennant flags are typically prohibited, but can be allowed in conjunction with a grand opening. You have the ability to put up signage that then other businesses see and assume that no permit is required. Once it's beyond one or two, it really does kind of get to a point where we don't have enough enforcement manpower to track it all down. Our wave signs, flutter flags, whatever you want to call those signs are extremely difficult to enforce because one business may get it from their corporate, they stick it in, it's no cost to them, we enforce it, but by then the next guy 3 stores down has done the same thing because he assumes it's okay. So we're trying to get some of these things more consistent. And like I said, when we first started this discussion a couple minutes ago, we don't have a specific regulation yet, but I think the idea of this is to present a more predictable and consistent package of sign regulations for our businesses. They don't like it when they're told no, when they see that somebody else has something. So I think trying to be totally consistent about our regulation would be a good idea.
So you're working on something in this area?
Yeah, I think just the types of things we're looking at are removing the exception for prohibited signs to be allowed in conjunctions with the special event, the flutter flags. I don't know that the benefit is outweighing the cost. The benefit to that business, there are ample opportunities to provide grand opening signage without doing that. It gets us into this situation where, because we know the history with it, we are structuring people's permits to allow certain signs for a certain amount of time, and other signs we're saying only a week, even though the code may say otherwise. So I think what we're leaning toward at this point is trying to just keep prohibited and not overlap it with something that's a temporary sign.
I think one thing for me that has caused some confusion in the fact that there are temporary signs that seem to go ad infinitum under the Section 3, that last sentence that says, at the discretion of community development, signs may be extended or reauthorized for another period, whatever, and that seems to go ad infinitum. And if one business can have it, then why can't other businesses have that same thing? So I'd really rather have a regulation that says temporary signs are for a definitive period, and then you have to take it down, and then let's talk about putting it back up, so it isn't just keep it there forever. But that's just my.
No, that's right.
Good.
I mean,
You take a look at that.
Yeah. Then they stay up for longer than that, and then they become frayed, and people they become an eyesore.
And there are those signs around town.
Yep.
Just have been there for.
Yep.
Is there anything else on this?
No, that's good.
I think that is about where we ended with what we were doing. Are there while we're here, any other issues that we should put on our list for draft?
If you can go to page 7 of
this?
Of
the sign code?
Title 21, yeah.
I can eventually go there.
Under section 21.03.400, which is the application for permits, items C and D talk about the drawings and site plan stuff, and I would like to have somewhere in both of those two sentences added that a date must be included on the sign. Now, when Big Mama or whatever it was, Hot Mama came last week, there were no dates on the signs. There was no received date. The ordinance doesn't say sign dated, whatever. So how are we to know what sign relates to what? You know what I mean?
I'm lost.
The-
On the actual
On the
paperwork?
actual paper.
Oh, I'm
plan,
sorry. Okay,
yes.
I thought you were talking about the sign.
No, on the
Paper
drawings.
plan.
Oh, the
drawn-
drawings.
Drawn date by whatever,
Okay, got it.
or your old received
Yeah.
date
Don't you still
stamp.
stamp them? Submitted on
You had to cut that person.
cutbacks, huh?
Well, I mean, even if it was a digital stamp, Andrew, that would be okay, as long as we can refer to that sign on that date.
Yeah, I think we can figure something out.
Because then, I hate to say, there have been times when things go to the village board that aren't quite the same. If there's no date on it, nobody can tell.
Good point.
And I don't know if there are other places that refer to site plans and stuff, but this seemed to be the most generic.
We'll take a look at that. I think we handle almost everything digitally now. And I think that when we have an ordinance, what we tend to do is label the last one. This is the approved one. If there have been revisions up to that point. But we do tend to add a digital label to those when they're done. We can see.
But it still should refer in our paperwork, this is the plan that we approved,
I would agree.
It might be easier for us to stamp a receive date digitally than it is going to be to get people to put dates on drawings.
Yeah,
Oh, that's fine.
anything that,
As long as you don't have to hire somebody else to do that.
you can make your own stamps. They have confidential stamps and paid stamps that you can.
I still have those at work.
No, digital ones.
Oh, yeah, but I still have a couple old that you.
Received by?
Yeah.
We'll figure it out.
Great. Because, it gets to, like, when, I was just going through this, when they talk about the inspection of signs, construction installation of signs shall conform to the submitted drawings showing dimensions, support sizes, and, if they don't know what the date was, that'll help going forward, too. Okay. Is there anything else in Title 21 that we should workshop? Mr. Schaff? No. Mr. Powers?
No.
Mr. Stedman, anything?
I don't know, I'd like some time to look. though.
Sure. Yeah. And we're going to workshop this again, I would assume.
I think what we'll do is come back, probably draft up some changes.
Sure.
Have a couple of photographs to show what we're talking
Right.
about.
So let's send any recommendations to Mr. Jennings and Ms. Jones. And that's for everybody. But anybody right now, is there anything?
I had a question outside of your highlighted area.
That's fine.
That's good.
The definition of a banner versus a sign as far as putting it on a fence. I looked at the definitions, I didn't see anything that said this is what a banner is versus this is what a sign is. It's in,
For the most part, the only thing allowed on
2106,
fences
700,
is
number 6.
warning signage. Where are you looking?
2106, 700, number 6,
And it's allowed?
page 20. No, banners are not, but signs are.
I think it's only, let me get there. I think it's only warning signage.
Keep going.
Temporary signs. Page 20? Page 2.
Oop, oop. Did you go too far? No.
No,
Right, right there.
All right, where am I?
Number 6, right above the highlighted area.
Oh, yeah, construction, so when a construction sign comes in, they're basically made two ways. It's this project by
Right.
such and such company, and they'll cut a flap in it if it's a banner so it can blow in the wind. So that it doesn't get blown off, they'll cut holes in it. So that's a construction sign banner. The
But
alternative
those
is
are
like-
not permitted.
That's correct. Because they blow in the wind and get frayed and whatnot, and construction projects can last quite a long time.
Okay.
Is there anything in there, and I'm just browsing, when we talked about the multi-tenant buildings, sometimes certain tenants will ask, could I have signs marking parking spaces? These are allowed, is there something in there?
Really, a sign code, the way we've handled that usually is, where we would see that is usually during somebody's special use or site plan review. If it's a particular use, the ones that we've had have been, like the drop-off spaces, like a 5-minute drop-off, pickup for the carry-out for restaurants, places where you have like a lot of kid drop-off, that sort of thing. For the most part, those tend to be really small, like parking, handicap parking size signs. For a review standpoint, I'd say they'd probably be in the, 2 square foot where we don't typically care about it. I could see us doing on a site plan review, I could see if somebody goes overboard on reserving spaces, I could definitely see that as being a site plan issue. But yeah, we could take a look though and see if I wonder if there are other municipalities who do treat that under their sign code somehow.
Yeah, some places have employee of the month parking spot right next to the door,
Next to the dumpster?
next to.
The only comment I have, and it's a generic comment, and I'm not sure where it's going to go, but if anybody watched the board meeting on Monday night, there was a discussion around gaming, and there was some questions about signage. And it wasn't very specific, and I think their concern was, I would think would be covered under most of our titles as far as, big blow-up things on the top of buildings and, lighting going around windows, advertising, video gaming or whatever. I would think those would be covered, but I believe we might want to get more definition as to what the board was looking for there, if there was something specific.
What you might be able to do for that,
Sounded like it was coming back to us, too.
what you might want to look at for that, all gaming establishments have a special use because they are restaurants that have on-site liquor sales for on-site consumption. So you might be able to modify this section in such a way as to regulate signage in the event that they do have video gaming. That would probably be right here under special use signs, E.
Well, if you could take a look into that, that'd be great. Is there anything else right now?
Specifically, as a general concern for special uses, it might be nice to have special uses and signage considered at the same time rather than have them split by months, years.
And I think you had brought that up prior, and something else that we had talked about, and I don't know if we could do that, but that sometimes makes sense because
I think it was Subway and Dunkin' Donuts.
Yeah.
Not having a
That was it.
a nicer
Right.
Dunkin' Donuts,
Yep,
but
yep.
not being able to approve a nicer sign until.
Later. Yeah, exactly.
No, off the top of my head, I don't know of any reason why you could not. It would be a Title 19 issue, actually. I don't know of a reason why you could not do, for example, what we just talked about with medical cannabis special use, why you couldn't just insert that into
Well-
the application requirements for special use.
But with the gaming establishments that I realize something like Estella's that would come before us again would be a special use. But we have establishments right now that are applying for gaming licenses that we don't even know about. And is there a concern and I'm not sure where the comments came from, is there a concern that we need to do something to ensure that the signage does not get out of hand in those areas? I don't know how it could. I think we've got a lot of things covered in our sign code, but you never know.
Well, I think they referred to AMVets specifically when they were talking about.
Right, they were.
That subject, and I haven't seen AMVets. I don't know if they have blinking signs or.
Well, they've got it
whatever.
on their board.
Reader board or?
Yeah, they've got it on their sign,
They have a changeable copy here.
changeable copy sign. And I believe they have a big sign on their temporary bus stop, that they have there. So, that's where people wait. They have it there. I think they've got a sign there.
Take a look at it.
But see, and I think a lot of that could be code enforcement too.
Yes, I mean, I think, we'll take a look at it. I think if you're going to be able to regulate it, I think that having it, because not every use, as you pointed out, not every use comes in front of you, but the sign regulations for that use could be, I think, spelled out. The automobile service stations, for example, have some additional language that don't apply to other ones.
Great.
I think you could probably come up with something without running afoul of the state gaming board.
Okay.
And I did remember one other thing that I had a concern with was off-premise business signs. Now, I remember there is or was a company down on Hintz Road
Oh.
that had a business down the block, but they wanted to put a sign on the corner of Hintz and whatever. NCR?
ACR.
Whatever. So they rented one corner office so that they could put a sign there pointing to their thing down the block.
I don't know.
Subsequently, they have moved out of that corner office, but the sign is still there. What are our rules on off-premise
I
signs?
thought we permitted that sign. I didn't think they had to do anything else. I
Yeah,
thought
they-
we permitted
They
it.
had to rent that corner office.
I don't know. I was on the board with that, and I know there was a boatload of discussion around that, but I thought we had eventually allowed it
And
without them.
that car repair at Hintz and 83 has on their sign, a sign pointing to the restaurant by name across the street. I don't know what the name of that automobile repair is, just south of Hintz.
Verizon?
New Horizon.
New Horizon, which I don't think ever came before us for signage. Anyway,
But in general, off-premise
Yeah.
signs, I'd
I
like
don't
to
know.
have a little bit more.
The short answer is it's prohibited. Just
it is
across.
prohibited.
Off-premise signs are prohibited.
But didn't we do some signs for like the Smith property when they put a sign over down on?
We've had developments get variations for off-premise development signage. I think there has been some precedent for that. We may have even actually changed the code to talk
And I
about it.
think the Weston
it's-
got some kind of off-premise,
Yeah, but those were development,
Yeah,
and I think
yeah.
they came before us.
right?
Yeah, I don't think anybody,
And I believe each one of those to get a variation.
Right.
Because it's prohibited
Right.
to have an off-premise sign. Willow Place, the townhome development, did something
Right.
similar.
Yep.
Because they were off the beaten path and
okay.
So they're prohibited, period?
yes.
Could you just make sure that that's,
Where am I? Okay, yeah, I'll take a look. off-premise signs being prohibited.
I couldn't find the word off premise, so my search might not have worked. But
So there's been, the precedent that we've had has been, I think, development signs. I don't think we've had other types of signage that I can remember right now, at least. We've had a handful of residential developments. We had, I think that is pretty much the extent of it.
Okay, if you could look at that. Is there anything else?
We did actually propose a series of regulations a couple of years ago for off-premise signs that were not development related. We were looking at something like a Seton Court, where all the people at the back end of the cul-de-sac might want to chip in and get a sign. So we did write up a series of regulations. It would have to be in an easement, permanently guaranteed sign easement, and that the commission decided in the end, once the regulations were actually in black and white, that it's such a rare occurrence that a variation would still be the better option.
Anything else? No? Okay, great. Thank you, Andrew. Thank you, Brooke.
Thank you.
Do you have anything else for other business? Okay. We'll start with Commissioner Dorban. Anything else, Commissioner Dorban?
Nothing, thank you.
Commissioner Sangara?
I have nothing.
Commissioner Johnson?
Nothing here.
Commissioner Steilen?
thank you, Mr. Chairman. Andrew and I have been having a back and forth discussion today about sidewalks and easements, and I guess we've come to some kind of agreement that it may be appropriate to remind petitioners that we now have a budget for sidewalks, and we should probably be looking to see if we have easements on properties, and if a petitioner has not granted us an easement, just to remind them that we probably will be asking for one in the long-term foreseeable future. Is that kind of what we came to an agreement on?
Yeah, I think the other step of that is that we do, when we looked at the 7-year, the high priority, we did categorize, when we were starting to look for the near term, the 7-year plan that we're budgeting for now. We did, on that budget, to prepare that budget, we did have a column for easement needed. So at least the ones that the village is pursuing, we are marking which ones do need an easement. So the ones that we are foreseeing the construction being more imminent, that we would actually design it, we do that, but we don't have a procedure for reminding people that we may come for an easement. But we can try to keep that in mind.
Yeah.
So just be aware that as time goes on, I may remind a petitioner that, or ask him if or ask Andrew if we have space for sidewalk, and if not, I'll just remind the petitioner that we're looking for that in the future.
Right. Good. Thank you. Anything else, Commissioner Sadler?
No.
Commissioner Powers?
A couple of things real quick. For those who weren't at the board meeting on Monday, President Argyris just want to make sure the commission knew that he was thankful for the job that we did on the FedEx facility. And of course, staff did a good job too, but for anybody who wasn't there, he just said thanks on a job well done on reviewing the FedEx facility, which got approved. The only other thing I had was, also at the board meeting, they talked about gaming machines and how they were going to be how the area was going to be identified for gaming machines location. It was something like, for example, this could be something as simple as a rope. I know, Deca, we said pull down, it was going to be like a pull-down curtain. Are we going to be looking into that anymore? Are we going to basically be going by what the state told us would be acceptable in, whatever regulations they have in place for that?
I don't know, other than deferring to the state, I don't really wouldn't know what else to do.
Okay.
As far as I know, they have a site visit as part of their licensing. They do an inspection before they actually issue the license. So I think that's actually been part of the holdup for some of these businesses, is just there's so few people to do the inspections and there's so many applicants. So I would say that if the state gets the license, gives the license, and they don't like the physical arrangement, they'll make them they'll require a curtain or a partition.
Okay, I have nothing else.
Commissioner Schaaf?
I have nothing, thank you.
I just have two things. One, Andrew, we had put at the end of the year, we had composed a letter to village president and Mr. Svandilis on lighting on Wolf Road. Did that get sent?
It did.
Can you forward a copy to the board? Thank you. And just a general question that, we've all been using iPads now for well over a year, I would think, right? I think we've been using iPads for well over a year. I mean, has it been a marked improvement in the quality of your work? I mean, has it made your life easier?
I think the paper packet was time consuming. I would say that we have actually reduced, an error in a digital packet is seconds to fix if we notice it before it's distributed. The speed at which we can deliver the packets to you is seconds. It used to take us hours to collate and drive a packet around. We would have to involve other departments. So I would say, generally speaking, on the staff preparation side, I'd say it's probably been easier. We don't stamp. When we were stamping drawings, one of the issues that we had is we had to stamp 200 drawings. You sit there for hours stamping each page. So now we can stamp all of the pages at once. So, there are things that I think we can do with this that we could not do before.
I mean, from a personal standpoint, I think it's been great. The ease of going through packets now, and the indexing, the referencing, the searching for things has been.
And certainly the size of the paper and everything that was copied.
I'm sure we've saved on paper.
I mean, some of those
The search
papers were
function, I
huge.
think.
Yeah.
The search function, I think, is a very good point as well. If we were to scan something, even when we were making the transition and people were handing us paper documents, you can't search it digitally. It's an extra step that doesn't necessarily work. So when we get something digital that's been converted to a PDF, you can search for a word very easily. So I think there have been some definite advantages.
And I think the ability to zoom in on some of the
Oh, gosh,
fine
yeah.
print areas
Some of that,
is.
oh, yeah.
I like the
Exactly.
fact that I don't have to store all those boxes and boxes and boxes of packets as before.
Yeah.
Now I can easily just store them on the iPad, which is
Yeah.
very, very nice.
Which is very, very nice. Yeah, so, okay. That was it. Anything else? Motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
Yeah, thank you. All those in favor?
I thought you seconded.
Aye. Adjourned.